Great. Thank you so much, Hannah, for the warm invitation, and to Claudia Simone as well, and to Vistum. It's really a pleasure to be here today. Um, I want to just give a little background, and let's see here. I share my slides. Aha, there we go. So the approach I'm presenting today is called green light communication. And we'll talk more about the organization later on. But I've been the executive director of this organization since 2011 and joined it in 2009. And we've taught all over the world in different cultures and contexts, taught to individuals, taught to therapists, taught to schools, taught to businesses. This is actually a workshop in Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine in 2017. So it was such an incredible pleasure to be there in Ukraine. Of course, none of us knew what the future would be at that point. And this is my mentor, who I learned this particular approach from, Susan Gillis Chapman. She's a retired marriage and family therapist and also a Buddhist teacher. And here she is. She's actually holding the Dutch version of her book, The 5 Keys to Mindful Communication. And it's an incredible privilege in my life to have been able to learn and study with her. What I want to begin today with is a sense of what we're here to do. What are we here to do? When we're talking about businesses and organizations, one of the main things that we want to do together is to accomplish things, right? To come together in teams. We want to coordinate. We have our agendas. We have things to do. How do I get people to, buy into my agenda? How do I decide to go with somebody else's agenda? How do we plan together? How do we assess our progress? Coordinate? How do you stimulate the kind of response you want? And how do you give feedback when things aren't going well? So that's what we're here to do. And then what I want to do is just to remind us of the bad news. The bad news, my friends, is that you're out of control. Now, what do I mean by this? We are trying to do all these things in a situation where we don't have ultimate control. We can control a lot of factors. We can do our absolute best. We can try to anticipate every situation. And we can't anticipate every situation. So I want to tell a little story. For some reason, this logo is showing up in the wrong spot, but that's okay. So this story is about a beautiful project that I was involved with. And this is the logo for that project, the Inner Climate Workspace, or the Inner Climate Crisis. And we worked in a team to bring together a project that could address the factors that are actually stopping us from addressing climate change. And these factors are not external to who we are as human beings. These factors are internal, because so many are facing tremendous despair around this topic that they are paralyzed. They don't know what to do. They can't figure out how to manage the emotions that come up around it. And part of this is actually because they haven't figured out how to deal with intense emotions. So the irony is that the situation is extreme and demands response, and we can't respond because we don't know how to deal with our own emotions. So the idea with the inner climate crisis was to actually help people get back to those emotions, give them tools for dealing with those emotions so that they can release enough of this despair to actually come into action. Such a beautiful project. We put together a team. We worked passionately on it for a number of months. We shot video, we flew and gathered our team together and had these incredible meetings, and we were all set to go. So when did this happen? This happened in January 2020. And we all know what happened soon after that. And as the pandemic hit, it became clear that the climate crisis was not the top priority in everyone's minds. And I bring this up not as a example of, this sad project that didn't come together. It was sad. We worked so hard. We had a great plan. We had a great team. And you could say, well, we could do it now. Now would be a great time to do it. The team has changed. People have moved on in their lives. People have moved on to other projects. The timing has shifted. And so that project got uprooted. And I think this is a great example because, of course, as we all know, none of us anticipated the pandemic. None of us anticipated the scale of disruption of our projects and our activities. And this is but one of a million examples that any of us can think about of the fact that we don't actually have ultimate control. And it's a very important thing when we talk about organizations to acknowledge this at the very start. So here's the really bad news. You think that's bad news? Here's the really bad news. So you've always been out of control. And I don't know if, cross-cultural humor is a challenge, right? I don't know, in English, we have this slang term that's come in about the last 10 years called a dumpster fire. That's a garbage can on fire. It's considered sort of the worst of the worst images of what could be going on. And the idea is that life is big. And not only can we not anticipate external circumstances, so-called external circumstances, but human dynamics, the inner aspect of human dynamics is the most difficult to anticipate. I'm reminded of and not only always in bad ways, actually, I'm reminded of a story that I heard recently, actually a fascinating historical story. When women were trying to get the vote in the United States, the ability to vote, it came down to one congressman from a very conservative state, and a state where the pressure was to vote no, women shouldn't get the chance to vote. So it was down to him. And how did this resolve? His mother wrote him a personal letter. She didn't publish it in a newspaper. She wrote it to him. And she said to him, this isn't fair. And I really think with your good heart, you will understand. And I think you know what to do. I think you know to do the right thing. And she appealed to him not at some political level. She appealed to him at a personal level as his mother. And he voted yes, that women could vote, and that allowed women to vote. So it's an inspiring story on the one hand. It's the power of one individual to change history in a way. But it's so, there's a tremendous amount in there about our ability to actually have control and affect things. But it also shows how unexpected things are. Nobody could have anticipated that she would write that letter and that would be the critical factor. And he talked about this afterwards. That was the critical factor, his letter from his mother. So human dynamics are unpredictable in good ways, in bad ways. And that's where we get into the really, really bad news, which is that by grasping at control, we actually lose control. And what do I mean here? That when we grasp at control and try to enforce our agenda over an entire situation, it transmits a subtle signal to others that we are not a leader that they can rely on. Or for that matter, we're not a team member that they can rely on. The impulse to enforce control in our business cultures, it comes from, ironically, a lack of confidence. This sense that people have that in a team, if the coordination or is poor and factions are pulling in different directions, then this impulse to control by one faction transmits a signal to others that their opinions are not welcome, their insights, their direct data sometimes. When this comes from a leader, when the sense of control comes from a leader, we might feel the pressure to comply because because of the nature of leadership and being in a business and the hierarchies. But when the goals are unrealistic or there's a lack of support, there's an underlying kickback, an underlying pressure back at the leader. You can think of the classic situation, the king who makes the commands and they'll send you to the dungeon if you don't comply. And so okay, great. Absolutely, I will comply. But is that loyalty? Is that coordination? Is that really coming together? When that king gives you a demand and says, do this, and it's a bad idea, and it's a bad idea, and you have evidence that it's a bad idea, do you open your mouth? You don't. And so the bad idea goes forward. And then the moment that somebody comes along with that king to cut off their head, you go with the other person. So what have we gained? What have we gained by this level of control? We gain a very shaky, chaotic, unpredictable, and unreliable situation. There's not a true sense of coherence and attunement. And that's why, this superhero vision of trying to control everything, having everybody be part of our web, we get caught in our own web, and then we become disabled. So Terence McKenna, the brilliant and quirky psychedelics advocate and explorer, said chaos is feared by the dominant archetype of our world, whose existence is defined in terms of control. And that's it. We think we need to control. And because we think we need to control, we generate our webs, we get caught in our webs, we create more chaos, and we feel more disempowered, ironically, by trying to control. So, okay, there's all the bad news. And I do want to tell a little story about how real this is. I think back to my 20s, and in my late 20s, I was in grad school, and I was teaching for the first time ever. And I was so completely out of my element. I didn't know how to teach yet. I hadn't had any training, actually. I think I had 3 days of training, and then I was thrown into a classroom, and I was terrified. I was anxious. I didn't feel like my plans would work. And one particular night, my students were supposed to have small discussion groups to talk about the reading that they had done, and they weren't saying anything. And I was getting so frustrated that they weren't talking. And this sense of control took over me. And I remember going up to one group and saying, "Why aren't you saying anything?" And they looked at me with that kind of that sense of fear that we have when a leader is coming to enforce control. And they couldn't even articulate what was going on to me. And I was pushing them. There's something you read the reading. So what do you have to say about this? Somebody say something. And the more I pushed, the less they could respond. These are 18-year-olds, a lot of them from small towns in the Midwest of the United States, rural towns. This is their first time at college, their first semester of college. And even in the moment, I had this sense that what I was doing was fruitless. I wasn't opening up the situation and allowing them to learn. I was trying to enforce my agenda because, now let's talk about why. I was trying to enforce my agenda because I lacked confidence. I lacked confidence in my teaching skills. I lacked confidence in my lesson plan. And in a fuller sense, there was a tremendous amount going on in my personal life. I no longer really liked my school program I was in. I wasn't sure why I was there doing this. And my relationship that I was in, my girlfriend was in a hurricane in Central America. And I had lost touch with her for about a month, and all these people had died in the hurricane. Turns out she was fine, but I didn't know that. She couldn't get to a phone because the roads had been washed out. I mean, it was a very dramatic personal situation. And all of this was coming to bear on me. And then I was pouring that into this sense of control of these poor students who, it was fine. We got over it. We moved past it. But the point is that my lack of confidence manifested as a more frozen and shut down situation than it needed to be. And I'm sure you can think of many, many examples of this. I'm not trying to shame myself or any of us, actually. This is just a very common phenomena. And we're going to talk today actually about how to move past that. So let's talk about the good news. Finally, you thought I was just going to stop the talk there, talk about all the ways in which we get shut down. So the good news is you are actually built to move with the chaos. You're built to surf the chaos. By reconnecting with yourself, you can coordinate with others. And this is tremendously good news. We don't have to feel like there's no way out. And I think often we do feel like there's no way out. We feel like, I have all these things to do. I can't get others to do the things in the way that I want. Anything could happen. A pandemic could happen. My friends in Ukraine, What plans did they have before the war began, right? Like none of us knew that was about to happen. And so how do I do this? Life is big. I'm very exposed. People may have judgments if I don't accomplish my tasks. And so we feel vulnerable and we can feel very disempowered. But this is actually coming at the situation from the wrong end. Our nature is to actually be able to flow with the chaos. The chaos is, we could just say the chaos is life. You know, look at human history. Chaos is life. Things happen. Stuff changes. Look at your plans, you know, you had when you were 17 years old versus now. Everything changes. So flowing with the chaos is something that actually draws upon, I'm going to say, I won't even say our deepest nature, I'll say our most foundational human nature, which is to use what's built into us, our senses, our emotions, our mind, to attune with others, to actually come into attunement. So this is going to lead us to our next topic here. Let's talk about mindfulness. Now, probably most of you have heard of mindfulness. Probably many of you practice mindfulness in one way or another. And, you know, obviously in Western culture, it's become, I think it's actually gone beyond the buzzword phase, finally. It's gone beyond the trend phase. And it's become just sort of part of culture. And that's good. I'm glad we're past the buzzword phase. You know, because there's an aspect, I think, initially as mindfulness particularly came into the business world, of it being overhyped. And, you know, it was going to solve all problems immediately. And, you know, you would just sit down and do your practice, and then the whole rest of the day would be glorious and powerful and effective. And, you know, everybody would love what you were doing, all of this. And of course, that's not life. That's not the way it is. But we don't have to retract away from that kind of, you know, overhype. Everything gets overhyped. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. So we can ignore that hype and we can embrace, you know, a more realistic approach to mindfulness, which is that it's, you know, it's a particular tool that you can use, and that tool can be extremely powerful if you understand it properly. And actually, I'll talk a little bit more later, but it's very easy, I will say, to misunderstand mindfulness and how it functions and how to do it. And we'll do a little bit at the end. But we need to talk about what mindfulness is. So this clear and acute attention to current experience. I say current because, you know, when you say the present moment, a lot of times people's minds go fuzzy. And they say, oh yeah, be in the now. And we're funny. As human beings, we are funny creatures. The idea that be in the now can just become a thought, and a thought which means nothing to us, actually. But being in the now is something that you all understand in terms of your current experience, like right now, exactly right now. You are having current experience. You're watching this presentation. And you feel things in your body. Your eyes are seeing things. You know, you see my hand move around. You hear the texture of my voice, but you also hear other things, background noises. Like I hear traffic outside. Just tune in for a moment. Just pay attention for a moment. You feel things in terms of your sense of touch. You have things that you're anticipating, like what is he going to say next? You might have things you want, like, I'm not sure this is really that interesting. Like maybe he'll talk about blah, blah, blah. You know, you might feel bored, you might feel excited, you might feel inspired, you might feel distracted. That's all happening in the present. Even your distraction is happening in the present moment, which is an ironic truth. Even if you're thinking about next year, you're thinking about it in the present moment. So the present moment is a critical point to come back to because it is the point where you have agency. You have agency. You can affect things. You can't affect things that are happening 1 year from now. You can't affect things that are happening a year ago. They already happened. The ones in the future haven't happened yet. You say, well, yes, but I can plan. Okay, but you're planning now. Good, plan now. That's fantastic. But you have to understand that the only point of agency we've ever had is in the present moment. So that's why this is so important. And we have to talk about the opposite of mindfulness. So mindfulness is in the present moment. What is mindlessness? Mindlessness is losing clarity, depth, and focus as we shift our awareness away from what's going on. And this is where mistakes get made. And mistakes get made anyways, don't get me wrong. If you become very, very mindful, you're still going to make mistakes. But you'll make them based on the best that you understand what's going on, the most you can perceive and contact in the situation. But mindlessness is where we shift into a kind of mental approach. We're no longer in our senses and our bodies. So we knock over a coffee cup because we were in a mental world. So when we forgot that we set the cup down, and then when we move our arm, we knock it over. And this mental world can lead us to, walk along this. I don't mean to pick on cell phones, but of course we all know the issues. And I'm not saying I've never done this because I have. But there's something where we shift out of the environment we're in into a mental environment. And of course, the bottom photo is maybe a little bit dramatic, but it's true. We can really generate mistakes that have real magnitude, mistakes that have real consequences. And it doesn't have to be hitting somebody with your car. It can be not understanding what somebody's going through, saying something that actually leads them to the wrong conclusion, not perceiving the full dynamics that are going on in a meeting. Planning in a way that sort of mentally makes sense, but as soon as you drop into the reality of the situation, you realize it doesn't quite make sense. There's 3 parts that are missing. We should have put in these other parts. So these really do have real consequences for us. Now, how does this relate to communication? I've been talking about all these things. How does it relate to communication? That's what we're here to find out, right? So communication begins with ourselves. So if I can't listen to myself, I will not properly perceive communication from others. That's absolutely the case. You might be talking away. You might have all sorts of things to offer, not just at a verbal level, but at the level of your facial expressions, at the level of the tone of your voice, your body language, all of these things. Now, you could be doing all of that. And if throughout that whole process, I'm lost with my phone, I'm not perceiving any of that. And all that information has been lost. So that's the critical thing, is we actually have to realize that to begin to communicate properly, accurately, fully, we have to come back to ourselves. And the good news is, coming back to ourselves is mindfulness. It is mindfulness. So we often think to communicate, I have to go out there. And there's a paradoxical kind of false assumption here. Aha, communication is over there. There's the person. I need to go communicate. But the truth is that if I go here and I connect back to my full faculties, they're automatically part of my experience, right? When I come back in and I use my eyes, I see the look on their face. So over there and over here become one thing. Oh, now I can hear what they're actually saying. I looked up from my phone. I can hear what they're actually saying. And I can hear that there's a little bit of worry in their voice. They're telling me the daily update, but there's some anxiety there. And maybe I need to ask a follow-up question. How do you really feel about what is going on with our project? So that's the thing, is as soon as we come back here, then we get everything. It's not like coming back here is shutting down. If coming back here cuts off the world, something is out of alignment, frankly, with your mindfulness. And that's not the aim. That's never been the aim. So our question then is, as the dynamics get more complicated, and they are chaotic, as we've discussed, how can we navigate? Because it can be quite overwhelming. We can feel like, I just don't know how to handle it. I mean, one situation, okay. But when another person walks in the room, or it's a complex meeting, you're on a Zoom call and there's all these little squares on the screen, it can just seem like impossible. But I want to use this metaphor of traffic. This is a fundamental metaphor within this particular approach, green light communication approach. If you know when to go forward, when to be careful, and when to stop, we could avoid the unnecessary delays and dangerous crashes. And think about this. This is not abstract. I live in a big city now. I used to live in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is one of the traffic capitals of the world. And at rush hour in Los Angeles, you've got millions of cars pushing in different directions. They all have different agendas. And you say, well, there's crashes that happen. And this is true, crashes do happen. But really, how rarely they happen relative to those millions of vehicles. And the reason that they don't happen is because there is a system. It's a very simple system. And we're going to adopt the simplicity of this system to navigate conversations because it works for those millions of cars. Let's utilize the simplicity of that. Now, the traffic light, colors might be slightly different depending on your culture. The traffic light is this metaphor for when is communication open and flowing? When is it closed? And when is it sort of in the middle? And this traffic light happens one moment at a time. So the traffic light is a present moment assessment tool that allows you to know what to do. Now, some of you might be thinking, boy, yeah, okay. But I mean, really, like present moment assessment tool that's a traffic light where there's 3 options? I mean, life is complicated. There's a lot more than 3 options. And that's definitely what I thought when I first heard about this approach. And how could it be? It's just too simplistic. But actually, the opposite is true. And over the years, my view has switched completely because I've understood that this simple model is endlessly powerful, endlessly powerful. And its simplicity is its greatest advantage. Because when we get into complicated situations, somebody could say, well, here's the 15 rules of complicated situations. Somebody could say, all right, here's your script of what you're supposed to say. When somebody comes at you and they say this, and this, well, in that situation, you could reply with this, that. And then you get in that situation and your face gets hot and you start sweating and your voice gets a little bit tight. Your eye starts twitching, whatever it is, right? We know these situations. Can you remember all those things? The truth is that most of the time you can't. Yeah, sure you can when things are easy. But when things are easy, you don't really need a big system to guide you, right? You need the system when things are hard. That's when these 3 lights come back and can become your greatest advantage because they allow you to navigate through these complex situations without crashing. So let's talk about what they represent. So the green light represents being open and present. So that's mindful, right? Now, what is open? Your senses are open. We've talked about this. Your emotional capacity is online. You're reading the emotions. You're reading your own emotions. And your mind is present. Your mind is open, actually, you could say. We talk about having an open mind is considered a good thing. Being open-minded. Well, what does that mean? To have an open mind means your mind is not stuck in one idea, in one agenda. Your mind is able to actually see, I think I know why that person just said that. It's not my view, but I can imagine what their view might be. And now I'm curious. I'm curious what their view, the full view is. And instead of, countering what they just said, I'm going to say, could you say more? I want to understand why you just said that. Can you say more about why you're saying that? Oh, and then they say something that's unexpected. Oh, I see. Actually, I hadn't thought about it that way. And in this way, having an open mind allows us to flow with the chaos. Having open senses allows us to see a changing situation as that worry crosses somebody's face. You know, having our emotions be part of our mindfulness lets me know, oh, I am getting triggered, as we would say in English. I'm starting to get a little upset in this situation. Now, that's not necessarily good or bad. It's hard to say, actually. That upset could be a really important warning signal about something that's going on. Or it could allow me to self-regulate a little bit to a deeper degree, saying, now is maybe not the time to do what I wanted to do in this meeting because I'm too upset. I'll wait till tomorrow. Let me sleep on this. Let me calm down. This is coming from my personal life, not from the meeting, and I'll take it on tomorrow. So all of these things are what we are in contact with in the green light. And when I say interconnected, this is back to this idea that what's happening here, over here, or, with me, connects me to the greatest degree possible with everyone else in the room. Or in the case of it could be a Zoom room, you could be all over the planet. But that's it. So you see that in that interconnected, chaotic, but interconnected nature, we are all changing each other in real time. Everything, I briefly studied theater improv. I don't know if this happens in all cultures, but theater improv is live theater, and it's mostly comedy, but you don't have a script, and nobody's making it up. You make it up together. And I studied with a beautiful teacher, Matt Smith, in Seattle, and he came up with this phrase: everything changes everything. When you are up on stage and nobody has a plan, everything changes everything. And the truth is that in that situation, part of why it was actually a very powerful contemplation, very meditative, is if you start to run with your agenda, like you want to look funny and you want to make a bunch of jokes, and you're not paying attention to your team members you're with, you ruin it. You absolutely ruin it. And it's almost always not very funny. All the energy drops out of the situation. The other people feel awkward. Whereas if you are tuned in and interconnected, the funniest things come up, and nobody plans them. They are just spontaneous expressions of the attunement within the people on stage. So it's a representation of the green light. Some of you have maybe seen bad comedy improv. I've seen so much of this, I find it actually really tedious. But when you see it happen, when you see people genuinely up there together being so present, it's magic. And this can happen in our communication as well within the green light. So knowing that this state is possible is really important. And we'll get back to what to do with that state. So the yellow light, now the yellow light is when we start to lose confidence. I lose confidence in myself. And this is where we attack ourselves. This is by far the most uncomfortable of the three lights. This is where all those little voices in your mind start saying terrible things about you. And we become fixated in an inward way. This is a deeply introverted state. And it's not introverted in a fun way. And some of you are introverts, and that's great. But this is introversion in a brutal way, in an unkind way. We start, and it's not just saying, like I didn't do a good job in that meeting, because sometimes you don't. Let's be honest. Sometimes we didn't do a good job in the meeting. Okay, that's fine. This goes beyond that. This is, you didn't do a good job in that meeting, therefore, and it's just a kind of inhuman assessment that gives us no ground to stand on. You are fundamentally wrong somehow. There's something fundamentally wrong with you. We don't even say the words. We just feel it as this kind of clenching anxiety. And it's worse than anybody else saying it to us, because it's inside ourselves. If somebody else said it, you could say, I don't buy what they have to say. But when it's you saying it to yourself, you really believe it. So this is a critical state in terms of communication, because when we're in this state of the yellow light, we're not really very open at all. In fact, we're like halfway shut. This is the in-between being open and closed state. We're halfway shut. And honestly, we're really vulnerable. You could even say gullible. We're gullible to being influenced by whatever comes at us. So if something comes at us with the wrong answer, we may cling to that because we're just desperate for something to be a little more clear. It feels very foggy and very painful. So somebody says, here, just go back into the meeting and tell them this. Okay, we go back into the meeting and we do the wrong thing. Now, on the flip side, we are very gullible in a way that if something positive comes to us, we may actually really go with that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. What is that like to actually have that positive influence show up? So it's a critical state. It is a critical state. If we don't deal with that state properly, we lose the whole thing. And we'll talk about that now. I mean, if we don't deal with the yellow light properly, then you get the red light. Now, the red light is where we shut down to external connection. We cut ourselves off. And here we become fixated in an outward way. So before we were sort of internally focused, here we become externally focused. And the reason we do this with the red light is only from the pain of the yellow light. It's so painful to be saying these really unfair things about ourselves. And I won't say unfair, untrue things about ourselves. None of us are fundamentally messed up. None of us are fundamentally incapable. None of us are fundamentally unforgivable for having made a mistake. You make a mistake and then you have to work with it and then you correct it and you move on. That's the truth. But these yellow light voices are so harsh that we want to shut down more completely and push this feeling outward. And we push this feeling onto others. We say it's not me that's incapable. It's that team. They're incapable. It's not me that can't be forgiven for a mistake. It's you that can't be forgiven for making a mistake. So it's an attempt to offload the emotional experience. Let me highlight this, all because I'm being unfair to myself to begin with. If I wasn't unfair to myself to begin with, I wouldn't need to shut down and push this emotional experience onto somebody else. And the red light is where we cause a lot of disruption. Because far from being interconnected, it is disconnected. And it is inaccurate. It's here, we were trying to navigate in our car through traffic. My eyes are closed now. I'm just imagining where I want things to be. I'm imagining cars that aren't even there. And you say, oh, I feel so much more relieved when I imagine the road that I wish I was on. Well, you're in a dangerous situation. Driving with your eyes closed is never useful. The red light is never useful, not even for one split second. Much better to have your eyes open when navigating through traffic. So, what is the red light really about? The red light is saying, stay out. I don't want anything coming into my world right now. So in the United States, we have these signs, no trespassing. You're not allowed to come onto this property. And the truth is that if I'm in the red light, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like you should just stay away. Now, I may say to you, when I'm in the red light, I may say to you, I want to hear what you have to say. Go ahead, tell me what you have to say. But I actually don't. I may say, come into this room. Let's have a meeting. But if I'm in the red light, I'm not in the meeting. I'm not there with you. I'm in my mental meeting with my eyes closed. So we have to understand what we're dealing with. And you can assess this. We'll talk about assessment later. Is somebody in the red light? And here's where, if I'm with somebody who's in the red light, I hold steady, back away, or communicate elsewhere. Let's be completely clear here. If I'm with somebody who's in the red light, they're not communicating with me. So all of my words, all of my attempts to get them to understand what I'm saying in that present moment, this changes moment by moment, changes moment by moment. In that present moment, they're not listening. So all of my words and whatever it's pointless. I might as well be talking in a different room. Now, because it's in the present moment, hear me here. Please hear me. Because it's in the present moment, it could change. So it's possible, these are not people, they're not red light people. As much as we want to make life simplistic like that, there's no red light people, there's just red light moments. So 5 minutes later, 15 minutes later, 2 hours later, 5 days later, that same person is not in the red light anymore and they can hear me. We need to be able to assess and feel when that has shifted, when those lights change. You see a red light in your car, you don't just sit there for a week. You wait for the light to change and then you go. So we'll get there. We'll talk more about that. So the yellow light is that sense of being balanced on an edge. You could either step back away or you could fall off the edge. Stepping back away is into your green light, the green light where you come back into mindfulness, or you get tipped over that edge and then you end up in the red light and you cause more chaos and harm in the red light. And again, this comes back to us in that moment being so vulnerable and gullible. We need to actually understand that and seek out the kind of feedback and environment that will naturally pull us back. We'll talk about that more later as well. And then in the green light, I mean, this is the good news. The good news is our natural state is the green light. This is our innate human nature. And in the green light, it's time to get things done. I mean, this is where you can really do things. This is where the creativity is flowing. This is where the solutions come up that nobody anticipated. This is the optimal time to communicate. And this is where you can change everything. You know, you've been waiting and everything's been stuck, and there's been lots of yellow lights and red lights going on in your team. And then one day, for many, many, many different reasons, things come into alignment. Go, do it now. Work on things now. This is your chance. Don't waste the green light. Never waste the green light. And not only can you be productive, but it's satisfying. It's deeply satisfying. Even, let's say, you have to have a tough meeting, really tough meeting, and you're not looking forward to it. I mean, nobody's looking forward to it. You know you're going to have to deal with something. I had one of these recently, actually. But we worked with timing. I used my skills. The other person used their skills. We actually had to work through a tough thing. It was okay. It was such a relief to have it be okay, because we were able to meet each other, work through the misunderstanding, and come together. And you can come out of a meeting like that feeling great. You can even, I want to say, come out of a meeting like that doesn't go well. And you know, somebody's still in the red light. But if you were in the green light, you say, you know, I tried what I could do in that situation. I tried everything I could do. Even if you have to fire somebody, something really unpleasant, you have to quit your job. If you're in the green light and you did it, it doesn't leave a residue. It doesn't leave an emotional residue that haunts you. So let's talk about the 3 guidelines. I won't go deep into this. So when the light is red, stop. When the light is red, stop. Think about this. I know that sounds too simple, but actually it's a profound statement. When the light is red, stop. Think about traffic. Do you just plow through the traffic even though the light is red? No, of course you don't. Of course you don't. And if you do, it's very dangerous. So when I'm meeting somebody who's in the red light, I actually need to hold steady. I need to hold steady, not try to insert, you know, sort of hammer my way through a closed door. Because the harder you hammer on that door, the more furniture they're going to put behind it to block you out. And it's the red light does not want you. The red light says no trespassing, don't come in. And I say, no, I'm coming in. It just makes the whole situation more stuck and more frozen. So I need to either hold steady. This can be a kind of neutrality. You're not trying to charm them. You're not trying to get them to be your best friend. It's better to be a little more neutral and not say as much. I won't go deep into this. So then we have to work with the yellow light. When the light is yellow, be careful. And caution here, being careful, like understanding that yellow light is on the edge of that cliff, to mix metaphors. The yellow light is on the edge of a cliff. And if we try to push, it's dangerous. You know, somebody's going into the yellow light, you can see them, you can feel that their whole demeanor is shifting. Something happened, and they're embarrassed, and their face is red, their cheeks are red. And you say, well, yeah, but I only have 5 minutes and I need to get them to do this, 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 and this. Think carefully, because if somebody's in that state and you push them and they go into the red light, maybe they'll even do what you wanted them to do, but they won't be there. They won't be connected as they're doing it, and they can make critical mistakes. This is true for us too. If I'm in the yellow light, I may want to do X, Y, or Z in the next 5 minutes, but I can't. I actually need to do something else. We'll talk about that. And then when the light is green, go. Again, this is the time. Don't waste it. When things come into alignment, when you come into attunement with others, now is your possibility. So, actually, before we get into this, I want to, if anybody has questions or comments, please, you're welcome. But I do often get certain questions, so I'll address those. One of them, because that's kind of the overview of what we did for today. I think that's plenty. I don't think we need to go more deeply into this. I wanted to say this is the tip of the iceberg. This is just the intro talk. This goes 1,000 miles deep. And we can go on and on and on. I even have some people viewing today who did an 8-month program of going deep, deep, deep into this. And it's actually incredible how deep it goes. Like, it goes into the way that you design interventions for systems, the way that whole cultures form, whether it's a business culture or a culture, family culture. It touches every aspect of life, because it is about the fundamental nature of how we as human beings connect to each other. And I want to say it doesn't restrict giving intense feedback. You don't have to play nice all the time. In fact, that can be its own red light sometimes. It can be immediate, it's fast, it's efficient, but it's also spacious. It's also warm, inviting, collaborative, all of these things we want. But people wonder, like, yeah, okay, but how do I know which light things are in? And it's a process to learn this. I will say this, some of you being introduced today, it's going to take a little while. But the good news is, back to our good news, it's built into you to assess this. Children can assess this in real time. Children can assess this. Sometimes children are better at assessing this than adults are, ironically. So this is how we assess. And it's what I've talked about already. Your mind, your heart, and your body are present moment tools that allow you to interact and assess in real time. And this isn't about thinking necessarily. This is so immediate. It's so fast. Our senses in the present moment are so powerful. You touch a hot stove, how long does it take you to pull your hand back? You're looking through the window of a train and you see the look on somebody's face. How fast does it take your mind to how fast does it take your mind to assess what is going on? It's immediate. actually. It's quite immediate. And I'm not saying you don't think about it afterwards, but it's that first hit happens straight away. In fact, it's hard to even separate the event from the response to the event. And then your mind, your curiosity is there to wonder, what did that look mean on that person's face outside the train? Wonder what's going on for them. You know, she had two children with her, and her hair looked a little messy, and I just wonder if she's a little overwhelmed or something. Like life is hitting her with too much right then. Okay, but that's it. And maybe I'm wrong. Those are just thoughts, but those thoughts can be open and curious. They don't have to be frozen. Oh, I know why she looks like that. She's probably a drug addict or whatever. Maybe she is. It doesn't matter. But it doesn't have to freeze into a solution. It can be open about possibilities. Maybe she is a drug addict. That happens. Wonder how she became a drug addict. Wonder how people become drug addicts. You know, I think of my friend who's a drug addict. You know, it could be like curiosity. So the mind is not our enemy here. And I want to just very briefly with you today try this a bit. And for some of you, this will be quite familiar. For others, it'll be unfamiliar. And either way, I want to just say this is super easy. You're not going to fail. And this is really worth you taking seriously right now. Because particularly if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a new way of knowing. It's a very ancient way of knowing, but it's new to some of us. So I want you to actually just lower your eyes a little bit. Your eyes can come down at about a 45-degree angle. And just settle into your experience for a moment. You can feel the shift, right? It's a weird shift. You've been watching this broadcast and suddenly it's like, what is happening? That's okay. Just let yourself wonder what is happening. And then just start to feel your sensations of touch in your body. Don't take them for granted. Right now, actually tune into them and just feel your seat on your chair. Feel your hands and skin on your face, the air touching the skin on your face. Feel your toes and the space between your toes. Feel where your clothes are touching your skin. And you can feel inside your body as well. You might not be able to really feel a lot inside your head, but you can feel that there's a set of sensations of the inside of your head, and same for your stomach and your chest. Can't feel every organ, but you can kind of feel that you have organs in there. What does that feel like? And you can say, what does this have to do with communication? That's okay. There's a thought that's coming up. We'll get to that. Now bring in your ears. What are you hearing? Not just my voice, but other things. Could be loud sounds, soft sounds. And then your eyes. Let your eyes relax. And then instead of naming all the objects that you see, just let your eyes see the colors and the shapes. Let your eyes be like cameras, like completely accurate cameras. They're just seeing shapes and lines and curves and color. And maybe if you're sipping your coffee, there's a little taste or smell. That's your body, that's your senses. And now feel the emotions that are happening right now. Tune into that. You might want to take a deep breath and let it out. And maybe there's a lot going on with your emotions, or maybe there's not very much. Doesn't matter. Might even feel like there's no emotions happening. Well, what does that feel like? And don't just name the emotion, just feel the emotion in real time. In fact, we don't have to name the emotions at all. It's much better just to feel them. It's very much like listening to a sound, but you're feeling your emotions. You know, it's like listening to music. And then finally, let's bring our mindfulness to our mind. What is happening in the mind? Are there lots of thoughts? Very few thoughts? Is there a kind of theme with the thoughts? Maybe you're impatient, or maybe you're excited. And is there gaps between the thoughts where there's nothing happening? What is that like? Okay, so let's bring all of that together. So let's feel your body, the touch all over your body, and the sound, and the vision, the colors and shapes. And then feel the emotions. And then allow the mind, the awareness of the mind to be there. And just for a few seconds, just rest in all of that. Okay. Now, I want to say that what we just did is nothing special. It's just built into you all the time. Yes, Hannah, please.
I don't want to interrupt you if you want to go on, but I thought this was a good point for me to come in, and I'll take the liberty to just answer the first question that came up. I'll read it to you, and then I will answer it myself because
Oh,
I
great.
prepared a
Okay,
slide for it.
I didn't see the questions in my chat. I don't know what's happening. Okay,
Yes, it's
thank you.
the
Please.
questions tool. So it's thank you
Oh,
so
I
much for
see.
these
I see.
amazing insights.
Yeah.
And could you recommend a book where we can read some of the aspects of the three lights?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
do you want to show it? I think did you have a slide? I'm not sure.
I
I
did
think you
back
had
at
a
the
slide
start. Yeah, let me take that back to the start here. There we go. Okay.
because I think it helps to see the cover because it's not that easy to actually find the book, as is my experience in the
Right.
German-speaking countries. So it's good to know how it's supposed to look.
Yeah. And can I zoom in? There we go. So there's the 5 keys to mindful communication, and there is a German version, but I believe it's only available in ebook at this point. And that's a fantastic overview of the system. Um, and that's by Susan Gillis Chapman. And then just coming out is The Art of Mindful Communication. And this is actually an overview of different kinds of mindful communication systems. But I myself and 2 of my fabulous teachers, Esther Hasselman and Chris Tranny, collaborated on a chapter in there that's an overview of green light communication, or sometimes called green zone communication. So that's another option as well.
I would also like to take the chance. I don't know if you prepared any slides, but when we prepared for this webinar, you said that you were actually preparing a short introduction online course on business communication, a business communication breakdown. Do you want to say
Yeah,
something about that, or is there something you
yeah.
can show about it?
Yeah, let me just get to the slide for that. Um, yeah, so this is a 5-class series that I'm offering May 16th to June 13th. And these will be live sessions and 90-minute live sessions, very much like today. But we're going to go much deeper into this material and actually allow people to learn how to practice it, because that's the hardest part. It's one thing to learn about the lights. It's another thing to actually practice with them in your real experience in real time. So, and then particularly, how do you handle situations where you just feel like, I don't even know what to do? I'm so stressed. I'm so anxious. What are the steps that we do at that point? We'll really get into that. And it'll also include a 40-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, and that's a chance for people to, um, ask more private questions or seek out advice on real situations that they're facing. So I'm really excited to offer that. Thanks for asking, Hannah.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea to bring this to the business world, because I myself, I took a, probably participants don't know that I took a weekend course on this material a few years ago. And as you say, it's very important to actually train these things, is my opinion, because it takes a while to actually get out of the mindset. At least for me, it was very strong to feel that I'm just not sensitive enough to feel what other people are, in what state other people are. And it took this weekend for me to actually um, see that, yes, I can learn this. This is something that is trainable. This is something that I can develop in myself, and I can be a better communicator if I apply these concepts. I think, as we also read in the questions and the feedback from the participants now, is that even learning about this concept of the three lights can help a lot. And it has given me insights into how I work, how other people work, and how communications work, only to know the three lights. But I think it's very good to also train it. And this is a consecutive question from me and from Wisdom, because we are interested in offering a live training, several day in-person training. And so we are interested in um, hearing from any of you who are listening now, who are watching this at webinar@wisdom.eu. We look forward to hearing from you if you're interested in participating such a program, either in Germany, somewhere in the Heidelberg, Frankfurt area, or in Vienna, where I'm myself. So, or if you only would participate in an online program, for example, if this is something that you would prefer, that's also an option. And we are thinking about doing this maybe next year sometime. But yeah, dependent on how much interest there is in the community. So we will also probably send
Fantastic.
out a newsletter with this question, but anyone who is listening now is very welcome and to write to us and tell us about it. So what further questions are there? Please write them in the questions tool. And in the meantime, Greg, you are free. What question did you said you had some frequently asked questions, and actually
Yeah,
the
sure.
other question that I noted down was what you already answered. So I think it might be really valuable to go through your frequently asked questions in the meantime.
Sure. Yeah, what does this have to do with enthusiasm and trust? I figured I promised that I would talk about enthusiasm and trust, and I think it's implied in a lot of ways in what I presented. But what happens when we actually attune with each other? And it's not the king threatening to send you to the dungeon. It's not the superhero caught in the web. It's a living exchange in the green light. Well, the greatest human resource for any organization is enthusiasm and joy and satisfaction. The feeling that you're a part of a team that's actually accomplishing things together, and that even if you don't understand everybody, you're not best friends with everybody, you're effective. It brings you alive, that sense of interactivity. And if you've ever been in a highly collaborative environment like that, it's just magic, and people come back over and over and over and over. They don't quit. They don't want to leave. I think of a friend's business where he really cultivates this atmosphere. It's highly successful web design business, large scale web design business. People never leave. He has, like he's lost 2 employees ever out of 75 employees. But he's just that kind of person. He creates that atmosphere, and highly, highly successful. So it can work. It can work. Have any other questions come up? I have another one I
Yes,
could do too.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit late or slow reading them, but
No problem.
um, are you planning to do a course in Europe in the future again?
We've definitely talked about this. It's funny, we haven't set up a schedule for next fall or the following spring, but I'm in conversations about that right now. So if you have an organization that would like to host something like this, please reach out. And I love that Vistum's talking about this as well. Really in a short program, a 2 or 3 day program, so much can get accomplished. Honestly, even a day or an afternoon, tremendous amount can get accomplished. And you set people up. I want to say this. I want to say that you set people up with skills that they themselves can utilize. So it's a distributed approach. It's not like, well, now we have to enforce this. And how do we set up structures to enforce this, whatever? It's not like that. You're planting these seeds in all of your team members so that they can do this in real time. It frees up so much space in an organization when you don't have to deal with constant dramas. So yeah, please, reach out. And if you're interested in online is totally workable these days. Live is fun. It's fun to get everybody together.
There's probably one organization in Vienna that's a social services organization that will probably be hosting a workshop. So if you're interested in coming to Vienna for a workshop, if that's not too far, please write to us and we can tell you about the dates, because they already announced that they will hold it open. So they have a lot of space and they will do it for their own employees, but they will also invite people from other organizations to participate. So we can, as soon as the date is fixed, we can also inform you about this.